self-determination. We understand that the collective institutions of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism have been at the root of our people's oppression. And we understand that without community control and without power to determine our own lives, we will continue to fall victim to genocide. Thus, we fight for our power, our right to self-determination and community control. And as a country around our 6 principles, which are: we defend the human rights of African people. We demand reparations. We promote self-determination. We oppose genocide. We demand the release of all political prisoners, prisoners of war, and political exiles. And we struggle to end gender and sexual oppression. All right, so a little bit about Black August. So what is Black August? It is a month-long commemoration to honor the fallen freedom fighters of the Black liberation movement, to call for the release of political prisoners and prisoners of war, and to educate our people on the history of continued resistance of Black and New African and African peoples to oppression, colonization, and in the U.S. and drug war. And these are some ways in which you can practice Black August. So during Black August, our community is encouraged to join us in the month-long observation and commemoration through studying. So devoting time to study and learn about and from our liberation struggles. Fasting, refrain from eating and drinking from sun up to sundown. If you're not able to fast from eating or drinking, you can choose another form, such as like fasting from social media, or fasting from like corporate media, such as like Fox News or CNN or what so have you. And also train, so exercise daily as your body is able, and devote time for physical training, and fight. Get involved in the fight to free political prisoners and join an organization fighting for Black liberation. And thank you. I'll pass it back to my comrade Jomo to get us started.
All right. Thank you again, Angel, for that and helping to get us started. So again, I want to thank you all for joining us we want to see everyone rise, continuing the Williams legacy of freedom, armed resistance, and international solidarity. As we opened up, the yesterday actually would have marked the 64th anniversary of their decision to go into political exile. And again, we're joined by two of the co-editors, Baba Akinyele Umoja, Dr. Akinyele Umoja, and Dr. Gloria Aneb House. And again, want to re-acknowledge Dr. John Bryce, who's the other co-editor who is now an ancestor. And again, we want to call his name and invite his spirit to be with this conversation. And tonight's conversation is a little bit of a part two of the conversation around the book. So if you haven't had a chance to check out Remembering the Williams, which was first essay book talk that we did with Baba AK earlier in the year. I invite you to check that out, because that helps to give some context of where we are and how we're gonna kind of in some ways move through the text and really look at the second part of the memoirs, which is taken from the title of Mabel's memoirs. We want to see everyone rise. And so want to also, in that, we're bringing some new folks in. So we have Dr. Gloria House here, and part of the story of the coming together of the book, from what I understand, is that they were trying to figure out who to get involved, and they said, and then Dr. Gloria House's name was mentioned, and they were like, ah, yes. And I had an opportunity to spend some time with Gloria as they did a book talk for Sankofa maybe about 2 weeks ago, and I now understand why they were a deep, deep yes. So we are in for a treat tonight to have Dr. Gloria House with us, and has in addition to being a poet, writer, academic, also has a long history of movement struggle. So Dr. Gloria House, if you could talk a little bit about your political journey, how you got connected with the Williams family, and later this book project.
All right. Thank you so much, Jomo, and you're welcome to organize the program. I'm really on this evening, particularly as we're commemorating Black August, essentially appropriate on a particular day. So, from journey.
Oh, you're Your sound is garbled again. Yeah, maybe if you turn off. Oh, and then we lost Gloria. All right, just for folks to know, Gloria's in a location that has some struggle with some internet. Oh, here comes Gloria now back again. So we'll ask folks to have us a little
Can
patience.
you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you
Can
now.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go very quickly of my own journey, Jomo, if
Okay.
that's all right.
Yeah.
My politicization really started when I went to study in France and had the opportunity to meet brothers and sisters from the continent who were very much involved in the struggles that were going on in their home countries for decolonization and for independence. And it was there really that my consciousness was raised concerning struggles of our people throughout the African diaspora. And I started to look at what was happening in the United States from a very different perspective, since I had a clear understanding about the role of the United States in worldwide imperialism. So when I came home from my studies in France, I was looking at our own country and our own struggles as Black people here with very, very different eyes. The first opportunity with the campus, nicely because students wanted to support the movement, had been organizing to do so. There was a major conflict on our campus when Board of Governors said, oh, no, you can't do this. You can't raise money. You can't be involved in that way on campus. And we said, yes, we would be, right? So that was a major struggle. We managed to shut down the campus because we got union support. And I understood then what's possible if people organize and are determined to make change. And we did make change. We did get students on the Board of Governors. We also organized the first teaching assistants union in university history in the United States. So I could see that organizing could be effective. And I also understood that you might lose some things in the process of taking sense. But in the process of that, I started looking to brothers and sisters who had been South and trying to understand how I could go South to be part of the movement. I didn't want to be on the sidelines, so to speak. So an opportunity arose. UC Berkeley and they decided to go and set up a freedom school in Selma, Alabama. We did that. We carried on freedom school for a while. I met all of the SNCC organizers in Alabama, one of whom was Kwame Ture. Some knew him by his slave, Michael. And Kwame invited me to come and work in the Lowndes County Project. I stayed in that Lowndes County organizing project for 2 years. We developed the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. It was a party, independent party for Black voters who could not vote in either the Republican or Democratic Party. They were both racist parties. In fact, the Democratic Party logo was a white rooster with the logo white supremacy, banner of white supremacy, right? So we were organizing citizens of Lowndes County in a separate party. That further politicized me. I worked there for 2 years. I was writing the anti-war statement that SNCC published. We were the first to publicize our point of view on the Vietnam War. And after 2 years, I was married and became pregnant there in Alabama. And the doctor said, if you want to carry to term, you better go somewhere where you can eat regularly. So I moved to Detroit with my husband. My son was there. I became involved, was born there. I became involved in the RNA once I was in Detroit. It's through the RNA, really, that I come in touch with the Williamses. Because RNA elected to honor Robert as president in exile while they were away. And when they came home, I was part of an organizing committee to welcome them back. and to have a major rally at Wayne State University, et cetera. So over the years, we stayed in touch. Mama Mabel and I went to various family occasions and celebrations. She also is involved in Idlewild, the small community where I am right now this weekend. And I had occasions to see her concerning events that were going on here. At some point, I was invited to write the foreword to one of the iterations of Negroes with Guns. I think that probably gives you an idea of the journey, Jomo, and how I came to be involved. I think you probably know already that it was Professor Bracey who said we needed a woman editor on the team of editors, right? And somehow the other, I was recruited to be that woman to particularly work on Mama Mabel's memoir and make sure that it was done well. So there you have it.
Absolutely.
That's my journey, and that's my connection to the book.
Absolutely. So rich. I turn it to the audience. I told you. Just really a very beautiful legacy of struggle, being a part of some of kind of what we now understand kind of historic movement moments in our people's fight for freedom. And you started to talk a little bit about the relationship with you and Mama Mabel. And the part of the intention of this particular program is to delve into the second part of the memoirs, if you will. And she named hers. We know if you go again, watch the Remembering the Williams, you'll get the story around why Robert named his while God lay sleeping. Can you talk to us a little bit about why Mabel chose the title "We Want to See Everyone Rise" as the title of her memoirs?
Well, actually, she didn't choose that title, Jomo. We editors settled on that title.
Okay.
Because it did, in fact, represent her own political point of view or her ideological reference, right? That after all of the experience of struggles in Monroe, exile in Cuba and China, as she looked back over her life, what she could say in terms of philosophy or ideological reference point was to say, we have been engaged in this struggle to see everyone live a better life. Right? She wasn't into sort of conventional, political ways of framing the way she thought about things. I think she just simply said, and we know she said because we quote that part in the book, this is the way I think it should be. People creating community together, people caring for each other, people ensuring that they all rise together. So I would like to read that section where she actually says, that's my personal philosophy. Is that okay?
Absolutely, please.
Would you like to hear the actual? Okay. She says, we were able to survive building networks of people who really have the true interests of the people in heart. I think that those of us who've come to this understanding, who hold this truth, need to look out for each other because we're all in this world together. We can't be selfish and look out for self, and we can't try to push other people down. Once we join together, we can make a better world, working individually and collectively, networking with people with like minds, raising the consciousness of our people so that they can understand the struggle rather than seek self-gratification. So they can understand the struggle rather than seek self-gratification, which is the opposite of what we're trying to do. We want to see everybody rise and have a better life all over the world, not just here in the United States. That's my personal philosophy. So you see how she expresses it in very down-to-earth terms. It's about caring for each other. It's about respecting each other. It's about understanding and reaching out to people who share that way of looking at the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to come back to that kind of that sense of care and community and how it was radicalized and how it played a role in their successful, escape from from the United States and from Canada,
Right,
and
right.
then even how it sustained them while they were in exile. And yeah, it's I if y'all were right on with the title, because there was, as I was reflecting on it, there is a way that her memoirs start with a memory and a reflection, a description of community, and it closes
Mhm.
with a description and a memory of community, and it felt really resilient at the end. I was like, oh wow, this is, she starts with this description of her family, and then it's almost like she is returning to family at the end of the memoir. So absolutely, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that was so valuable, particularly in the culture of Southern African Americans, right? And I remember Akinyele and I were talking about this at some point, and I said, um, they didn't think in terms of women's role or men's role or whatever, because in the South, that isn't, we didn't make those divisions, right? People did what was necessary. Um, yeah, and it was always about community, that sense of community and resistance that can be carried out because there is community.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we're gonna bring our the people's professor on, aka Akinyele Umoja, and again, the program marks the 64th anniversary of their harrowing escape to Cuba. Again, I just want to keep pumping. Go watch Remembering the Williams to get the story around how that happened. Um, but if you could talk to us about kind of what is kind of political exile or political exiles, right? And kind of give it some context, and talk a little bit about kind of the set of circumstances that led to their decision, and and someone kind of couch it in how that was a strategy of revolutionaries and revolutionary movements at that time. Easy question.
I know. I was thinking about it in this context. As you said, we were together a couple of weeks ago, and the question came up. One of the elders of the movement stated at the session we were at Sankofa, he said that there was this big dichotomy between nationalism and internationalism. But then he said, made it like it was nationalism versus assimilation. And the tradition that the Williams kind of set the foundation for in the United States, that part of the Black Power movement, they call themselves revolutionary nationalists. They saw a connection between national liberation, our liberation here, and internationalism. So reaching out internationally into struggles internationally, tied to Mabel's title, we want to see everybody rise. We want to
Absolutely.
rise, but it's not like we want to rise and nobody else rises. That we got our foot on other people's necks. That we're modeling the type of society that our oppressors have, right? And so I don't even think, I don't know, I don't have evidence that they were looking at it like this is a strategy and we're doing this to get that. I don't know. I think Rob is very clear. He's always been support of people's freedom other places. In fact, long before they go to Cuba, he's a part of the Fair Play for Cuba committee. He's one of the first people after the revolution from the United States to go down there. He plants a Cuban flag on his front yard, you know what I mean, in Monroe, North Carolina. He goes around the country speaking about Cuba. So I think they just see this as an important part of what we do, but it just so happened it helped them. Neb, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but it helped them because when, as you said, first there's this, he's he has to leave Monroe because it's a threat that him and the rest of the family would be lynched. I don't know if we emphasize the rest of the family in the book. We
Mm.
found that out when Lisa,
Lisa.
the daughter-in-law of the Williams, said that's what her husband John told her, that they were gonna lynch four people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, for their own safety, and they thought it would just be something to blow over, they leave Monroe, North Carolina, and then they found it's a national manhunt, FBI, Rob's picture on in the post office,
Most wanted. Yeah.
most wanted. So goes to Canada. Why? How can he go to Canada? Because their network that they had established to support, get solidarity in Monroe, reached to Canada, and there were folks in Canada. I think, if I remember correctly, correct me, Gloria, if I'm wrong. I think Mabel stayed with a West Indian family.
That's right. First with the Canadians who met them, right, and then found a safe place for her, right.
And then Rob was with some white folks.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
so they already a part of an international network, and so then they hear that Fidel Castro says if Robert Williams shows up at one of our embassies, provide him with safety. Again, he knows who Robert Williams is because of the solidarity.
That's
So
right.
it's not you know, they go together. Our national liberation, because we're an oppressed people, we're a oppressed nation, right? And so people who are in solidarity with that should support that. We should hold them to supporting that. And at the
Mhm.
same time, um, people are aware of him because of the work he's done in solidarity with other folks.
Mhm.
And so that's how it connects. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's obvious from the book, as we've been saying, people, because one people ask me, one of the things I learned, I didn't know that they went and got him and brought him there. I've heard of exiles where you just gotta show up. You know what I mean? But they went and got him from Canada and brought him to Cuba. And so and of course they engineered for the rest of the family, for Mabel to get there, for Robert Jr. to get there, for John to get there. You know what I mean? So it was an international network that was established. I don't know, and I can't say that was. I don't know. Again, Ned might know if that was their strategy all along, or if from learning these lessons, because remember, I think Rob is the first exile. Rob and Mabel, the first exiles
Mm.
from the U.S. to get to Cuba, follow.
Right. And then there's several. Yeah. Then
Yeah.
there's several after that. Yeah. Black
uh,
nationalists to follow them. Yeah.
yeah, all of the Panthers, people in the Republic of New Africa,
Right.
people in
Right.
BLA, Asada, Nahanda. So,
Right.
I think people might see the importance from their experience. So they're foundational to our understanding of the necessity of that.
Right. And they're foundational, I think, to our understanding that we belong to a much wider world, that our struggle is not, doesn't have a border of the United States, right? As revolutionaries, we have a much wider world of solidarity. And their choices really illustrated that for us. Am I coming through clearly or
Yeah, I
warbled?
can hear you.
Okay,
Just a
I
little
just
bit, but
want
we can understand you. A
just
little
want
bit.
to add one other thing about exile, though. I think what's really significant about their lives in general is that each time, they came to a sort of critical point, they had to make a decision. Are we going to take up, for example, are we going to take up arms? Yes, we are going to do that, right? So when it was the threat of their being lynched, being killed, being murdered, or whatever, when Robert said, I have to leave because I will die here otherwise. When they understood that their lives were in danger, they were able to say, okay, we have to leave this place. We have to take that leap of faith. And I think at each point in their movement lives, they made decisions like that. And the next step, they were self-determining and they were courageous about the next step that had to be taken. And he have to go, because if I go alone, they will harass you and I'll have to come back, right? I won't be free if I don't have my family. So, that really major decision to go into exile, to take the whole family into exile, and the amount of courage that took, the amount of real commitment that took. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't lightly choose exile. I guess some people do decide, oh, I'm fed up with this country, I'm going away. But clearly that was not the case for the Williamses. It was about life and death.
Yeah, yeah. You all raise a kind of a good point around the strategy, right? Kind of as I listen, I'm like, yeah, there was this first, let's get to New York, right? And this will blow over in a couple of weeks. They get to New York, and now they're like the FBI is looking for them. So then there is this calculation, right? That I think Robert talks about it like, oh, we can go. Or no, Mabel talks about it like, oh, let's go to Canada because Canada has never returned any escaped African slave, right? And so they get to Canada, and then they're
Right.
like, oh, now the Mountie thing, and
The
that's
Mounties are after
right.
us.
And that's one
Right.
of the
The
first names.
FBI.
Yeah, you hear one of the first narratives. I'm like, oh, and Robert was afraid, right, based off the thing. And then there is the like Cuba, the move to Cuba. So you're absolutely right. It wasn't necessarily something that they had fully planned out, but it was kind of each step by step they having to make sets of decisions around kind of what's the next thing for them, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
being actually
Yeah.
really to rely on this community of care that they had organized through the Crusader.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And their sons, they weren't all together when they were in Canada too. They're in separate places.
Yeah.
Again, because of the network that had been established, or really the network, as you said, through the Crusader, and having friends who are willing to sacrifice also,
Hmm.
and to provide support.
So,
Pardon?
for Mabel talking about what it was like to be hiding in Canada, right, and looking forward to going into Cuba.
Okay.
I always like to read some of the patches from the book. It's one way of getting people into the book, right? Oh, I want to read the whole thing.
Yes,
But
yes,
but I think
yes.
to hear their voices, right? So if I could just read a little piece of that.
All right. You jumping
Is
right
that
into my
okay?
next question for you. Yes, that's the next question is actually to talk about Mabel's experience in preparing to exile because I found it particularly moving. I could feel it. I was like, yeah,
Okay.
how I would be so worried. You're gonna read it about how what the emotions that she was feeling, and wanted you to talk about to read. So yes, read it, and then if you could talk a little bit about when she was recounting it in her memoirs, what was then kind of her feeling about it, kind of post the event, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Oh, and you're breaking up a little bit
The
again.
old, the
Yeah,
old,
what if
the
you
whole.
stop your video? That might help.
I'm afraid to do anything, thinking it will just take me out
All right, well,
altogether.
it's working now. Yeah, let's go
So
with it.
maybe if I get closer, whatever. The Indian couple, the Olsons, who greeted Mama Mabel. And she talks about the fact that they reached out to all of their friends, to help find an appropriate place for them to go because they were being hunted by the FBI and the Canadian officials as well. So she was taken to stay with a West Indian family. And she says, once again, I was isolated from everyone and everything that I had known all my life. I could have no contact with Robert, my sons, or my friends in Monroe, not even the oldest. I could call, write them. For my own safety, I had to attempt to become a part of this wonderful host family of husband, wife, son, and daughter. I was a visiting relative. My head was swimming. I could not control. I thought I'd never see my family, my home, or my friends again. I was debating whether I should just run away back to the United States and try to find my sons. Would we be safe, or would we be killed to make an example for others who dared to challenge the system? I wondered where Robert was and if he would be safe. If he was caught and sent back, how would I know what was happening? Would I ever see him again? I prayed day and night for the protection of Robert and the boys, for our friends who were still in Monroe, and for those who had helped us to. She's pretty open about the torture that she felt being, in exile and being in this sort of no man's land and not knowing what the future was going to bring to them. She managed it. She did not go back to Monroe.
Right.
And I always say, in terms of the example she set, she did not go back. She stepped into a life for which she had no preparation, really, to be a diplomat, right? To stand with Robert in Cuba and in China, to raise her boys in two foreign cultures, and to do it all with dignity and with a certain realization that her engagement was equally important and heroic as her husband's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And including those roles, helping to continue to produce the newsletter, Crusader,
Mm-hmm.
to start the
Right,
radio,
right, in Cuba and in China too, actually, for a while. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of those roles she's playing,
Uh,
and we didn't know until recently that even some of the artwork, the cartoons that are on the Crusader, she did. Um, so out, just amazing.
yeah. Absolutely. I love y'all. Y'all are like jumping right into the next question because that is where you are absolutely going.
But it's a conversation, Jomo.
Yes, yes.
It's a conversation.
Absolutely. Because yeah, as I was as in kind of reading kind of back and forth, that's kind of as I approach it. I would try to read one story or one particular incident from Mabel's and then go back and reread it from Robert's to kind of compare the different experiences. And in doing that, it feels like in bringing the and again to Dr. John Bryce's kind of brilliance around him and being a fight for Mabel's inclusion in the memoirs. What it does is in some ways it begins to illuminate the critical role that you are talking about around the role that Mabel and other Black women played in the Monroe movement and in political exile, and want to lift up the name of Ethel Azalea Johnson as one of those. And so I guess since we're in a conversation, AK, you can start us off, and then Gloria, you can jump in when we talk about the role that the central and pivotal role that Black women played in the Monroe movement. Um, Tell us a little bit about who Ethel Azalea Johnson was. And again, kind of going back to this community of care that Mabel is a part of, a central figure of how that particular community through the Crusaders and Monroe, again, played this role in their successful escape from capture and saved their lives.
Well, Ethel Azalea Johnson was one of their neighbors. And as the movement develops in Monroe, and I think it's in 1959, particularly after Robert makes his statement, you got to meet violence with violence, that the NAACP silenced him for. They decided to come out with this newsletter, The Crusader. And it's those three, Robert, Mabel, Ethel Azalea Johnson. Robert's name's on the masthead, though,
Mm-hmm.
but he's projected. But they're the ones who produce in the newsletter. And Mabel says it's other Black women she doesn't name who are part of this newsletter that's distributed that has a key role, as you mentioned before, of people had heard about the story of Monroe. It was in Jet and other things like that, and certain a lot of black press. But then they were able to tell their story themselves, and not only commenting on their movement in Monroe, but commenting on the movement in the South overall against apartheid. As well as international struggles. They were talking about. Gloria talked about being. Uh, Igniting her consciousness, being in touch with African liberation movements, where they would talk about African liberation movements. Uh, they were kind of favorable to the Nation of Islam as well. Robert would talk very positively about Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Nation of Islam. So they gave a different type of political analysis that was coming from the South that a lot of people were hearing. We were mostly hearing Dr. King and others, but it was a different perspective, and we know that our movement and our community, our people, there's diverse opinions. But to go on about Ethel Azalea Johnson, after Monroe, she would move to Philadelphia, and she would become one of the mentors to Max Stanford and Wanda Mitchell, others in the creation of the Revolutionary Action Movement. She would be engaged in the left with Workers' World Party, and Workers' World Party was one aspect of the left that provided support for, and it's mentioned in the book, there were people in Monroe who were there, including a friend of theirs, a comrade of theirs from New York, May Mallory. She and three young activists were first. They had May Mallory goes underground, and they capture her and bring her back, and they have the Monroe defendants trial, and ultimately they were able to get released because the legal advocates during that time, they would challenge the decision of particularly civil rights cases because black people in the South were denied access to be on the jury because we weren't allowed to register to vote, you know. And so that was challenging. May Mallory was released, and of course, May Mallory becomes a very important figure in the Black Power movement. I think one of the images we have of Rob meeting in Tanzania, May Mallory sitting there with him with Gaidi Obadeli, Rob's lawyer. So that's another sister who plays a critical role. And she was in Monroe when the incident occurred. There's actually a book that highlights May Mallory now by, oh man, she's gonna be mad because I'm struggling to remember her name. That's what happened. You get this senior moment. Uh, by Paula Seniors.
I got you. This the one.
Paula, yes,
Yeah.
May Mallory, the Monroe Defense Committee and World Revolutions, and they have a chapter in that book on Ethel Azalea Johnson as well. But she's mentioned throughout the book, and what I didn't know until we got to do this project is May Mallory ends up being in Ottawa too when the Williams come there. So they have like this decades of solidarity and friendship with Ethel Azalea Johnson, but she's a figure that not a lot is talked about because some of our activists, May Mallory, and she advised the Revolutionary Action Movement. Some are very quiet and doing the work behind the scenes and doing the critical organizing work. And she obviously did a lot to prepare young people to emerge in the struggle. And I believe from Max Stafford or Muhammad Ahmed's narrative is through Ethel Azalea Johnson, he meets Queen Mother Moore, who becomes another mentor, who was a part of the Crusader Network. You know what I mean? So you also read in Barbara Ransby's book on Ella Baker, how Ella Baker had connected with Ethel Azalea Johnson in the Monroe movement. and it was a supporter of what they were trying to do in terms of armed self-defense. So, it's a broad network and a lot of people working behind the scenes and doing the critical organizing, which, the Sisters in the Movement were doing.
So do we want to mention what the newsletter was like? It wasn't Xerox copies, right? This was real work, mimeograph machine or whatever, right? A page at a time.
Yeah, the first was very
stapled
raw.
together.
I have
yes,
I
right.
have a picture of the first one.
Labor intensive.
but over time,
right.
they their skill.
Right.
And it,
Exactly, but I think Rob's trying to get at Jomo was trying to get at the work of the women, particularly, right, in the Monroe movement. And they did play a major role. Also in the defense, right, in armed defense. Mabel says that some of the women did become members of the Guard, but those who were not members of the Guard were involved in what was called the Defense Committee. They have organized a phone chain or whatever so that people could be alerted when there was danger and everything. So women were busy, were really busy and really engaged. She also mentions that when the Freedom Riders came in to Monroe, they all they looked for them, they found housing for them, they provided places for them to stay and to be comfortable or whatever to do their work. So they were very much engaged in the daily movement activities in Monroe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was true. That was true in the Southern movement in general. Women were very much engaged in the Southern movement.
Yeah, absolutely. She writes, I helped to recruit ladies for our rifle club and defense committee. Not every woman belonged to the rifle club, but most of the women belonged to our defense committee. And then a little bit later, she writes, almost echoing a little bit of a quote I've heard from Assata Shakur. She writes, I was actively involved in the struggle in just about in every way imaginable. Right?
Exactly.
So, absolutely. All right. So hope that point landed.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
Thank you for that. So we're gonna start to move towards kind of a set of closing questions. Want to invite folks in the audience, if you have a question that you want to raise to our panelists, to use the question and answer function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can answer. You can also potentially drop them in the chat. We'll try to have the folks on chat support track the questions, but we gonna try to get some audience questions in. But the kind of, again, we'll just kind of keep it conversational. So I'll take whoever the question, who I intended to ask the question, whoever feels the spirit to answer the question can do so. But for the Williams, exile simply meant that their organizing base had shifted, much like for political prisoners and captured prisoners of war, as we had discussed in a previous session that we did around Walter Rodney, Malcolm X, and George Jackson, where Walter Rodney talks about the terrain of struggle only changing. It was the same thing that capture only meant for political prisoners a change of where they would do the struggle. So we could talk a little bit about how even from political exile, the Williams political work continued. And there is then a particular intervention that around after the bombing of the Birmingham church and the killing of 4 Black girls, where they are able to get Mao Zedong to issue a statement in support of the Black struggle there, that they feel like they assess was credited to helping to actually maybe damp down what was then going to be a continued escalation and attack. So wanted to kind of for either one to talk about kind of what was their political work once they were in exile, and to take us a little bit into the Birmingham and the Mao statement and why that was so significant.
Oh,
Go
ahead.
What? You're wanting me to start, Akinyele?
Yeah, you can. We go ahead. Go ahead.
Were you about to though?
I was, but no.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Oh
Go
man.
ahead. I will chime in. I'll chime in.
Well, number one, as Gloria said, they were acting as ambassadors, representatives of our movement. And so, and I like how Gloria said it. They they were prepared for that. Didn't go to a training school for diplomacy, right? But they
One
had
step at a time.
but in Cuba, representing themselves to the Cuban Revolution. But you get the sense though that they weren't just interacting with the leaders of the movement because it was Cuban workers who helped them produce the newsletter when they're in Cuba, and then help them with the radio program. So they're engaging with everyday folks who are helping them to produce uh, these publications or these media vehicles. Um, so as diplomats, as journalists, but even going abroad, particularly as you said, Jomo, the terrain opens up. So the Williams are going to Vietnam, you know, and so we see photos of when they're in Africa or when Rob's in Africa first, of him being with people from different African liberation movements that are in Tanzania during that time. So they're doing the diplomacy on behalf of the movement, and I think sometimes in behalf of particular organizations, because you could see in some of the Crusaders when Rob's is speaking in Vietnam, he's speaking for the Revolutionary Action Movement. Other points, at least he's articulating, particularly after the Republic of New Africa is formed, the provisional governor of the Republic of New Africa is formed, he's representing that body as a president. And so, and Mabel as the first lady. And so they're representing on that level. Excuse me, Gloria might want to speak about the importance of Miles' statement and how that developed.
All right. But I agree with what Akinyele has just said. At no point, they're never not engaged in the movement, right? Because even when they're in exile, they're carrying an incredible responsibility to represent our movement, right? And our nationalist movement, our Black nationalist movement. And Mabel, it's very clear, they thought of our movement as a movement for a Black nation, right? And this put them in real contention with some other folks that they met, some other Americans that they met abroad, right? And made it difficult for them in some moments. But about the statement from Mao, again, this sense of internationalism, the fact that we were not isolated as Black people in the United States, that the world was very big and that we were part of that bigger world. I think that's how Robert have the consciousness to say, look, our children are being murdered, dogs are being set against our children in the freedom movement. And
It's really chopping up now. Yeah.
Sakana and Nkrumah, Mao and Sihanouk in Cambodia, wasn't it? Yes, Indian leader Sihanouk, right? And who is incredible. I'm just so impressed with that statement. I think every class in African American studies should read Mao's statement supporting the African American struggle, because it's detailed, it's clear. Look, these people are studying our history more than a whole lot of folks over here study our history, right? What was happening to our people at that particular time, and then calling on the whole world, right, to come to our support and to our defense. And one of the most important things Mao says in that document is that we are the world's majority, we people of color. We are, towards the end of the statement, he makes this very strong point. Remember, we are the people, we are the majority of the world's people, we people of color. And we must stand up for and support the struggle of African Americans. So, of course, this doesn't win greater support for Rob from the NAACP core, right? And they again, they abandon him and criticize him and everything. Taken to he has said this struggle is so important. We are so important as a people, as a nation of people. We can reach out to others who understand what we're going through and win their support. So the whole idea of international solidarity. A couple of weeks ago, Akinyele's already mentioned it, someone at the meeting that we held at Sankofa was sort of you couldn't really be an international. Akinyele and I talked about this after the meeting, and my understanding is you really cannot unless you are a nationalist, because you have to engage in solidarity with others who use contentious forces, but rather one leads to another. I think the more you understand the position of your own people, the easier it is for you also to reach out and to show solidarity and understanding to other people who are suffering the same oppression. So the two are linked in my mind. And I think the two were linked in Rob and Mabel's as well. You
think yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a very important point. You think about Vietnam. I think one of the reasons of the inability of U.S. imperialism to defeat the Vietnamese people, of course, you got the resilience, the unity, the resistance of the Vietnamese people, but you also had a Black Power movement here, and people were resisting, on different levels. It raised the consciousness, and even the soldiers who are fighting in Vietnam, it's impacting their will to want to fight in that war, particularly uh, soldiers of African descent. So, as Gloria is saying, it's important if you're to have internationalism and nationalism connected. That we got to fight for. When we fight for our own interests, it does aid the people of the world because we in the belly of the beast.
Mhm. Yeah.
I think I lost you for a while
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
middle of a
yeah, yeah.
sentence.
Yeah, I tried to pick it up.
But I think Akinyele must have picked up. Yeah,
Yeah.
just where I left off.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
We tag teaming.
right.
Absolutely. All right. So then my last question, again, kind of now kind of understanding kind of Rob and Mabel as kind of the first or prototype or model of then political exiles would then follow. Um, when we talk about kind of recentering on Black August, oftentimes our work is around trying to free our political prisoners and prisoners of war. But there is also the third category of political exiles. So, if you all could highlight some of the kind of new African independence political exiles and also kind of Black liberation movement political exiles, talk a little bit about their organizing while in exile, and particularly wanted to for you to talk about AK, and maybe you, Gloria, too, if you have some information around talking about Nuhana Abiodun, right? Whom we have our international, our solidarity committee is named after.
Man, oh man. Now you don't make me cry up in here.
Mhm.
But because Nahanda was a dear comrade of many of ours. Um, she went into exile because of her activity supporting the, New African Underground. And you know, at some point she leaves the United States. When she first goes to Cuba, I think they wanted her to be quiet, and so she was basically not really. It wasn't announced she was there, but Nahanda was the type of person. She's developed relationships with people in the community in Cuba. At a certain point, she was allowed. They did announce she was there, and so she had an assignment to work with the organization of Cuban women. And so she began to organize tours for people from the United States to go to Cuba to interact with Cuban women there. So women from our struggle went to Cuba, and it was a way of not only getting political education for people here, to not only about Cuba and about socialism, about anti-imperialism, the role Cuba's playing in the world, but also to introduce the Cubans to our struggle. So, you know, they had those type of interchanges. Um, Another role that Nahanda played is particularly after Fidel Castro pushed the initiative for Black and Latinx students from the United States to go to medical school in Cuba. Um, they were already bringing in people from Angola, Mozambique, you know, South Africa, Guinea-Bissau. They had, you know, students were going to medical school in Cuba for free from all over the African world and going back to their countries. But when he opened that possibility up for us, students from these other places had an embassy. They had, you know, they could go to people for cultural development, for, you know, just to reinforce their culture, who they were, and things of that nature. And just a place to have social, you know, get together and eat some food, you know, listen to some music, whatever. But our folks didn't have that. So Nahanda's house became that, you know. And so when we go to her homegoing, because she passes there, you know, it's like 20 young people stood up and said, you know, Nahanda mothered us. And we were able to celebrate Kwanzaa at her house. We were able to do Black History Month. We had political education at her house. And so she played that type of role for our people in Cuba. Final thing,
Mm. Yeah.
interacting with people, and people find out that she's somewhat related to Tupac. Not because she's blood related to Tupac, but there was a time that Afeni Shakur and Nahanda were like this. You know, when I met Nahanda, she was rolling with Afeni in New York. You know, they was hanging out, you know, and doing the work in New York during that time. And so when they found the young hip hop artists found out, they would ask her for guidance and whatever. And then during that time, our organization did, particularly out of New York, did the Black August Hip Hop, and Honda played a role in helping to connect um, young people from the United States with young people from Cuba, and which is why, you know, it blew me away after she passed. We didn't say this. The Cubans said she's the mother of Cuban hip hop. So, you know, in that spirit of the Williams, she continued to work um, where she was at, continued to build, continue to represent us the best she can with meager resources. Uh, she was able to do that, and so you know, just it was a blessing for us to salute her as an ancestor by naming our international work after her. And, you know, her name should live forever.
Shame, not shame. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. I realized, I was like, oh, the connection between kind of jazz and hip hop, both by the Williams and then New Honda. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just
Mhm.
absolutely. And then I guess we also want to highlight, I think was it this month? I feel like this month the New Jersey uh uh what is it? Police department kind of reissued another or a bounty around Assata Shakur, so it feels like that was just
I
important.
didn't even see that.
Yeah, I have to.
Lord have mercy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to not just say what I want to say. I'm gonna try to keep my
Right,
mouth.
right. Well, let's jump to participant questions. So, the first one is coming from Ace, and this is a question around the Williams and their travels in Tanzania. So the question Comrade Ace asks is, did Mabel travel to Tanzania with Robert? Can you talk about some of the activities they were involved with during their time in Tanzania? Uh, and were they connected to any of the anti-colonial struggles happening on the continent during that period?
Well, we know they, as I said, they met with people like from the Pan-African Congress of Azania and other liberation movements that were in Tanzania during that time. Mabel, and to answer the first question, Mabel did go. I know they took, I know they took a motorcycle ride through East Africa.
Oh, only Rob and friends. Mabel on the
Yeah, yeah. But there's a
right.
picture, maybe that was in the city. There's a picture of her being on the back.
Right, that's around
Yeah,
the
but
city,
Rob,
right?
I think
Maybe in
was
Dar es
traveling flat.
Salaam,
Because
right? That might have been Dar es Salaam or whatever.
and
Yeah.
what
Um,
I go
Mabel,
ahead.
maybe the African trip. So I'm not really sure how much she got around. Rob does more writing about it, and really sort of going there. I could think with some thoughts of returning to the motherland, right? The way all of us go for our first trip to Africa or whatever. And I think probably, correct me on this, Akinyele, but I think he had thought to look around for the possibility of their staying there, permanently, right? But it simply did not work out. That hope or vision didn't materialize. Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah,
But
it seemed
yeah,
that
that
he wanted
motive.
to be gone. Yeah, but no one was prepared to take it. And then the
Right.
possibility happened for him to come back. So, but yeah, I think his preference would have been to be in the motherland.
Glorious. All right. So we're gonna move to our next question from Sean. Any advice kind of connected to this question of international struggle? Any advice around how to talk to people to help them understand how their struggle is an international one and how to move them to act on that?
Say it again.
Any advice on how to talk to people to help them understand how their struggle is an international one and how to move them to act on that. So I guess it's how do we build an international consciousness in our movements and get folks to take action?
Mhm. I think we start with imperialism and the impact of colonialism worldwide, right? And how most of the world's people of color have been oppressed by the Western world and other cultures, right? Once they understand, as Mao said, once they understand that we people of color are the world's majority population, right, and that most of us have experienced similar kinds of colonialism and imperial exploitation and robbing of our resources, and we see parallels between ourselves and those people. One of the things we're thinking now about Vietnam again. We're going to have a conference in Detroit about that. But one of the things we said in the SNCC statement against Vietnam, oh, we see how the United States abroad to recruit so many peoples of the world under the American and under the UN. Look what they're doing to people within the border. Thing in our other people, we can't find jobs. We're housing. Oh, that's the same thing happening to those folks over in that third world country. We begin to see the parallels of struggle. So then it's very easy to link our struggle with those struggles once we understand that, and we understand that we have a common enemy. So I would say that's the way you begin. In your organizing on a daily basis, part of the education should be to see, oh, yes, this is the oppression we are struggling against. But look over here, they're doing the same thing. How can our solidarity with those people make our struggle even stronger and lift it, into their consciousness, into world consciousness? That's how I would approach that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we have to do more political education. I think it makes a
Right.
difference too. Um, when you actually have people from a particular movement internationally comes here, to have them come speak at churches, speak to different organizations, or even more intimate gatherings, so people can get. I think when folks meet somebody too, sometimes that human connection, um,
Right.
the creation of relationships, I think is important.
Right.
Even in working with young people, if we could connect with youth groups in other places and have some sort of communication. So we're developing that type of international consciousness amongst our youth. And again, it's reciprocal. The youth in Venezuela, Cuba, Palestine, just to understand what, our movement here,
Mhm.
just to exchange those ideas, I think sometimes that developing, friendship, really helps develop that consciousness. So we have to do those type of things.
Mhm. All right. Our next question um, is from Charlemagne. They write, it's interesting that you mentioned that Ms. Johnson went into exile in Q. I think this is Mabel, supposed to be Mabel Williams.
Okay.
And China, as her liberty was restricted by the FBI. And during those times when Black people didn't have a voice and were restricted in the judiciary system due to oppression, um, they were, I'm sorry, I miscut this, but they were basically a sense of powerlessness and that they had kind of uh, penetrated the court system, right? So I kind of drawing back to the moment where Rob is saying that we have to meet violence with violence after the court fails to give them justice.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like what is an activist to do? What are activists doing to negate that form of racism in society in today's society? I guess that's the question. Kind of how do we look? Where are the Williams in the world today? I'll maybe couch it like that.
Mhm.
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's part of why the book is written, was pushed out there, because again, their last surviving son before he passed really wanted his parents' legacy to be shared with the future generations and current generations of struggle. So, I mean, we do know there are Black self-defense groups begin organizing more. We do know that people are doing international work, and we do know, as we're doing right now, people are doing the media work that they did. And so we need to know that we had predecessors in doing this work, and we need to continue to do it. But I think uh, for me, when I was first reading it, I was connected in my head the type of white supremacy we saw emerge, particularly during the Barack Obama administration, the reaction white supremacists had to Obama, to what we saw on Trump, first Trump, to what we're seeing now, this whole MAGA movement. I really connected in my head. Even when Gloria and I were going through the book again to look for things, the type of outright hatred, and knowing that these are the ancestors of the people we're dealing with right now. But I think sometimes I think we forget, and so this just shows us a connection to that.
Mhm. All right, we are down to our final two questions. This one ask us to talk a little bit about kind of what the experience of was for Robert and John Williams, if I remember the names of the two sons. But it's as I listen, I'm struck by the fact that while Mother Mabel wears all of these hats, she is still navigating motherhood. What does that look like? And are there any bits of reflection from their children on experiencing exile with their parents? Some of
Wow, I wish Lisa was here because Lisa could really answer that question well.
Lisa's
Lisa's the
actually
daughter-in-law
on
and
here.
husband of John, right? Yeah.
She's
Yeah.
she
Is Lisa here?
she's on there. I don't know if she could we could bring her in, but
Yeah,
she's
that
she's
would be best
she's one of the attendees. We actually
because they don't really write about the children in the, they agreed not to write about their personal lives in the memoirs. So we don't have much about that in the memoirs. But Lisa could answer that question. We know that they did a good job as parents because they raised people who made such good lives for themselves, right? Both their sons made very good lives for themselves. So we know that they were good parents to be able to help two young men navigate those two cultures, to come out healthy and happy and leaders, community leaders. So,
and
absolutely.
but we don't have much else.
John did write a
Go
piece
ahead.
growing up as a revolutionary and growing up and living in revolutionary countries and just going through the struggle. It's an article. I think John wanted to, and I don't know, Lisa could answer that as we've said. He wanted to write his own memoir. And I'm not sure because, um, after caring for his mother,
That's
he
it.
got sick himself. So I'm not sure how far he got on that, but we do have that article that we could certainly share. It's already been published. I think it was published in San Francisco Bayview.
Yeah, if Lisa, if you are interested in coming on, we can pull you in as a panelist. You give us a sign in the chat or raise your hand and we'll have our tech invite you to be a panelist.
She's still there. I see she's still registered and logged in. Okay. And if not, if you're in Atlanta on September 28th, you'll get to hear her uh, along with and Dr. House's new African name is Aneb Kokosile, and along with Dr. Kokosile and Claude Marks of the Freedom Archives. Lisa said yes. Pull me in.
All right, folks. We're getting a treat. We're getting Lisa Williams and again part of the story of the book and it coming together. Lisa is in so many ways really the spirit of the book, making sure that it reaches completion. And so really excited that Lisa's able to join us. Lisa, if you want to I think you should be able to cut on your camera and or just come off mute and share with us a little bit and welcome.
Oh no, that says I'm talking.
I think Lisa's there. And then while we're doing that, there's a request in the chat for the link for the September 28th event in Atlanta.
Okay, I don't have it. Let me see. You asking somebody who's not adept with technology. But we'll certainly post it on the same networks that we posted this.
And today.
What'd you say?
That I'm not adept at technology. I was saved by a friend who had got me on hotspot today.
to put up the link because let me see. Did we put that on our social media yet? I think we did, but
Okay. I'm still.
So some people may be attending the Asala conference. We'll be
yeah,
speaking there too.
yeah, we'll be in the Association of African American Life and History Conference here in Atlanta on the 26th. It's in the morning, I believe, 10 in the morning. But on that Sunday, the 28th, that's when we're having a program. It's free to the public. And we'll all be speaking there. Let's see. And so Lisa must have got hung up. I go and speak for Lisa's not adept with technology either, but she can cut it. She can cuss me out later.
All right, all right, all right. Absolutely, yeah. If you can get a chance to see the three of them together, it is a powerful presentation. There's so many kind of layers to the story of this really amazing book, The Memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. And so we are at time with our questions. There were two that we probably couldn't get to, but or I guess we could try. It's about 2 minutes. There's a question around speaking to the role of refusal and contradiction in our movement spaces, and a question around which seems like a resounding yes, um, was around did the Williams move towards revolutionary theory and practice with the grassroots inside the USA? And I feel like there are many moments, kind of both yes inside the United States and while they were in exile, they continued this kind of practice, this grassroots practice of revolutionary theory and practice through Radio Dixie, the Crusader, the ways they were able to connect with everyday folks in the countries that they were being held in refuge in. But I don't know if you want to speak to the question around the role of refusal and contradiction in our movement spaces.
Think we just have to. Nev talked about the courage. We have to be courageous enough, particularly in intimate spaces. Everything doesn't need to be on the internet, but we need to have conversations with each other about being honest and moving forward, even when we have contradictions. To be courageous enough to discuss them.
Mm-hmm.
What he said about revolutionary practice, and Neb knows this better than I do, but they began, and when they were in Idlewild, they began to do some organizing around some issues. I think some of their stuff, and I got this from talking to Mabel one time. One of the reasons that Rob didn't, pursue this, like being the leader of the whole Black Power movement, that he saw some holes there and he wanted to pull back because he didn't think uh, the maturity was quite there. And so he needed to pull back and move in a different type of manner once he returned. And we saw, yeah, that was true. And so as we rebuild, we gotta. I think it's the person was saying that we got to begin to deal with some of these contradictions and build in a different type of way.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And just kind of as I was sitting with the question around the role of refusal, obviously the Williams were a no to capture, a no to turning themselves over to the system in so many ways. So again, this refusal, and then there were others who joined them in saying, no, we will not participate in bringing them back. So I think there is this power of refusal, the power of no, and it is an important part, right? I feel like there's sets of kind of narratives. We feel like Frederick Douglass has a quote where he's like, "You stop being enslaved the day you learn how to say no," right? And the power of that, and we can even draw that to what we saw in the liberation of Guinea with Sekou Touré, right? And the vote where they were like, "No, we would prefer poverty versus riches and imperialism, right? So there's this role of no, and in terms of contradiction, right? I think when you go reading the memoirs, right? Part of what Mabel talks about Robert being really good at is navigating these sets of contradictions that he's coming across. First in Cuba around the kind of the avocation for a black nation, whether or not that was communist or whether there needed to be like kind of black-white unity, right? And he's able to navigate that, and he same very similar sets of contradictions in other places that he's able. For him, he's like, I was focused on the struggle of my people, and that was part of kind of how he was orientating himself. But Mabel in the book says that he was very good at understanding some of the contradictions and being able to kind of foresee them and to navigate through them in a way that help people continue to have some dignity and to continue to hold relationships together. So I think that's probably one of the lessons in the book, particularly to that question. All right, beloveds. I think we lost Gloria. We never got Lisa in. So again, want to invite folks if you're in Atlanta to check out the event on the 28th. If you're going to be at the conference that first week of September, to do so as well. So if we could give some love in the chat to Baba AK and Gloria and also Lisa for engaging us in the conversation. And we want to see everyone rise. So thank you all again, and we'll turn it over to Angel to talk us a little bit about what's next and how we can close out the month in support of our political prisoners.
Shay.
All right, thank you for that, comrade. Yes, if we can continue to give it up for Gloria and Baba AK in the chat. This was such a fruitful conversation and really grateful that I was able to attend. So what's the call? Free them all. It is our fifth principle. So we have Kamal Siddiqui to our left, who we're asking folks if you would like to get involved in his international campaign to free him. You can do so by visiting www.freekamal.com. And also, if you would like to donate to his campaign and also donate to his commissary as well, we have a Biddle link for folks. Also asking if folks can write letters to him. And really write letters to all of our PPs, right? Next up, we have Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who is currently being held in Tucson, Arizona. And we're asking folks to get involved in his campaign and also learning more about, just who Imam Jamil Al-Amin is, also known as H. Rap Brown, or formerly known as my fault. And you can visit the website www.freeimamjamil.com. And we're also asking people to sign the petition to bring him home as well. And we have the Biddle link right there. And we'll also be dropping these links in the chat too for folks to access. Next up, we do have Mumia Abu-Jamal, who is being held in a Pennsylvania penitentiary. And he currently has a medical campaign, emergency medical campaign that's happening right now, where folks can visit bit.ly/Mumia Health Donate to learn more. Right now, we are asking for, there is an active campaign, right, to reach out to the warden as well as other prison officials to get him the necessary medical treatment that he needs. He currently has cataracts, and he is on the verge of becoming blind. And cataracts is very treatable and is free if you have health insurance, right? And so please do what you can to spread the word and figure out how you can get involved in this campaign as well to free Mumia Abu-Jamal. And then next up, we have Shaka Idea Shakur, who is being held in a penitentiary in Virginia. And if you want to learn more about him and how you can get involved in his campaign to bring him home, we ask that you visit www.shakashakur.org. And also, again, just please, write letters to these folks. And then we also have Reverend Joy Powell, who's being held in a penitentiary in upstate New York. And if you would like to donate to her campaign, we have the link bit.ly/freejoydonate. And we also have a website for her, which is www.freejoypowell.org, where you can learn more information about her. You can buy a t-shirt or a sweater that will go directly to her campaign as well. And also just learning more about her work. And we also have Josh Williams, who is from the Ferguson Uprisings, political prisoner, who's currently being held in a Florida penitentiary. And we're asking people to donate to his campaign and also donate to his commissary, which is bit.ly/free Josh donate. And to learn more about Josh and his case, you can visit www.freejoshwilliams.com. And then next up, we also have the Stop Cop City activists, also known as RICO 61. Their trial, one of the defendants' trial actually started last month. But unfortunately, this trial is closed to the public and closed to the media. And so we're trying our best to figure out how to get information. And so if you want to learn how to get information, there is a website that they have that folks can visit. I don't have the link for it now, but I'm sure if you just like type in Stop Cop City, the website will come up and you can find more information on how you can stay connected and learn more about what's happening and getting involved in other campaigns to stop cop cities being built around the country. Next slide, please. All right. Here we are. So we're back at it again. By popular demand, another MXGM National Membership Orientation. This is our fall and winter sessions. So we'll be having 3 sessions every Sunday starting September 14th, September 21st, and September 28th from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. In order to complete all, like the entire orientation to be considered as a member, you do have to come to each and every session. They are virtual, but if you're not able to like make up, like if you miss like a session, just let us know and we'll try to figure out how to get you into like a makeup session so you can join. Yeah, we are always looking for new Africans and Black folks who are interested in freeing the land, who are interested in building the new African nation, right? And really who are in alignment with us and our principles as an organization and the work that we're doing. So if you are interested, and please register at bit.ly/MXGM SEP Nat Orion, and it is all caps. So no like lowercase letters, everything is capitalized. And we look forward to seeing y'all on September 14th, bright and early. And I'll pass it back to Jono, right?
Yeah,
Or
it comes back to me
thank you.
Thank you, Angel. Again, want to encourage folks to consider joining an organization as part of the principles of study, fast, train, and fight, right? When we fight, we must fight together in an organization. And we have completed our Black August programming for 2025. So want to thank all of you all for being with us, for being in revolutionary discipline with us this month. May all the fasting, study, training, and fighting transform you and bring us all closer to liberation. And we want to always remind folks that it is Black August 365, that the fight to free our political prisoners, prisoners of war, and political exiles is a struggle that we must make every day and in every kind of way. And I hope that this month's programming has inspired you, has educated, agitated, and hopefully will move you to organize to free them all. And that is always our call. What's our call? Free them all. Black August Resistance, free the land. Thank you all, and good evening.